Welcome to Assembly Calendar. I'm Mike Friesen. With us for our program today, Assemblyman Dan Burling, representing the 147th Assembly District in New York State, an Assembly District that includes the counties of Allegheny, Livingston, Wyoming, and Genesee. We want to thank Dan Burling for joining us today. Thank you, sir.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Glad to be here.
We got a lot to talk about. You know, let the people in the 147th District know what's going on at the state capitol. There's a lot going on here.
Yeah, it's a busy place right now. I mean, we've got this budget.
I was fighting the traffic, the pedestrian traffic, just to get here.
I tell you what, this is when I probably lose a few ounces. You know, running up and down the stairs, you can't get an elevator.
And there's a lot of people who are clogging the stairwells, even let alone the elevators.
Yeah, everybody is trying to, state their position on this budget, and it's going to be a tough year.
And we're going to talk most of the show about the budget process, where it is right now. Dan Burling's got an important part to play in that process coming up over the next few weeks as this process continues to progress. But before we get to that...
like 2 weeks to get it done.
You better get on that.
I know.
Before we get to that, we've got one other piece of business I want to ask you about, and that's a couple more of your colleagues. One state senator, another member of the Assembly, indicted on some charges this week, basic corruption type charges. That's got to be a little frustrating to somebody like yourself.
Well, you know it is. I mean, most of us come down here, the vast majority of us come down here, take time away from our families, in my case, time away from my business, to come down and try to do the people's business and try to represent the folks, the philosophies and the lifestyles of the people that I represent. We clash with these folks from down the New York City metropolitan area, and we'll talk about that as far as the budget's concerned on school funding. But their values are completely different from ours, where we're at. I mean, I come from an area where they're hardworking people, farmers, factory workers, family people. And I don't know, we just keep seeing these people from the inner city, down the New York City areas, they don't come down here just to do their job for the people. They seem to have to line their own pockets, and you're seeing it over and over and over and over again. And it's wrong. We need some serious ethics reform. And of course, what I support and what the governor supports. There are many, many, many attorneys down here. Nothing wrong with being an attorney, but they do very well coming to Albany. This is a very fertile place, as I've said in an article I did with the Times Union, for attorneys. They use the position here, many of them, to garner clients and influential people for money, because of their position here as legislators. And unfortunately, a lot of these people you see get in trouble are attorneys. Now, in the governor's ethics bill, what he wants is attorneys to divulge some of their client base. Now, they say, well, look, that's confidentiality. But, people like, well, I won't mention names, but some of the high-powered people around here seem to do very, very well as legislators, I think because of the work that they do on the outside. And I think that those large firms, these special interest groups, influence the legislation that's done here. And if you want to run for office, political office, and you're an attorney, you should know that you're going to have to divulge your client base. If not, don't run.
Right.
But what we're seeing here is we're seeing people whose interests are more directed towards lining their own pockets and enriching themselves rather than taking care of their clients back home. And then they cross that line. And what's happened is we see more and more of it all the time, that these people are getting in trouble, and they're here for the wrong purposes and the wrong reasons. And we just, unfortunately, there's another example. And there's been, I would say, since I've been here, 10 or 12 state legislators, and I'll hate to say this, but all but one was a Democrat, that are doing hard jail time because of the crimes they've committed.
I guess the good side, the upside of the story is, if there is an upside, is that the system's working. The laws are in place. People are getting caught, and they are doing their time.
Right.
The downside is that there seems to be a culture of corruption on the part of many who do come here to Albany. And I started off by saying it's got to be frustrating to you because you end up getting painted. Everybody. Oh, you've probably heard this from people. Maybe they haven't said it right to your face, but everybody in Albany must be on the take. Everybody in Albany must, because you get painted with that broad brush.
Yeah, and maybe so, but not so much in my district. I mean, in my district, I don't think people are that cynical. They're concerned about all the mandates and the legislation that affects our lifestyle that comes out of New York City. They're concerned about hearing that they want to put a $25 fee on every gun that we own. Well, I own about 25, 30 guns. This is just another attempt by the liberal downstate politicians, primarily the liberal Democrats, to take our Second Amendment rights away from us. They're concerned about the DEC. This is we can't have any outdoor burning. Now they're talking about possibly eliminating outdoor wood-fired boilers that people use to heat their homes. That's what we're concerned about. We just want to be left alone where I live. But the downstate liberal politicians in New York City want to force their liberalism and their different philosophies of living on us, and we just want to be left alone. That's why I had the bill that separates New York City from the rest of the state. You laugh, but I'll tell you what. Every time I mention that, people say, that's not a bad idea.
Not a bad idea at all. There's always going to be that section of the people that are going to think, that's got some, just look at the problem that we're having. And as you said, that's basically been an inner city metropolitan New York area.
Yeah.
Let's you take that thought right there, though, as our jumping off point to talk a little bit about where the budget negotiations are, because as you said, there have been a bit of a disparity between the cuts that the governor has proposed and that the legislature has been researching, and an inequity in how those cuts are being, at least there have been charges that there's some inequity between the way those cuts are being played out. They're supposed to be across the board, but as you and I know, not all things are always equal here at the state capitol.
Well, what we're talking about here is that we all understand, we all know that there has to be cuts. I mean, excuse me, the people of the state of New York understand that taxes are too high, businesses are leaving, you can't find jobs because we're taxing people right out of the state. So they understand that we need to cut back. And the two biggest pots of money, of course, are health care and education. And my schools and my superintendents and school boards understand that we need to cut back, and they're willing to do that. But to give you a blatant example, Wyoming County, which I wholly represent, where I live, has the largest cuts of any county in New York State. And if you look at the graph of high cuts to low cuts, it goes from Western New York down to New York City. In other words, the biggest cuts are out in Western New York, the least are down in the affluent areas of Westchester, Long Island, those areas down there, where the people have better jobs in those areas, are more affluent, and can more easily make up the difference in cuts. Whereas in my district, the mean income's maybe about $35,000 to $40,000 a year. But the highest cuts are in Western New York. And so why is that? Well, I mean, to me, it's pretty blatant. This was the governor's proposal, okay? The reason is, the way I see it, is very political. He's going to take care of the people who elected him. The people out in my area are more conservative, more Republican, and they didn't vote for Andrew Cuomo. And so here's another liberal politician from New York City. That's where he's from.
Queens. From
Queens in New York City. And he doesn't care about our lifestyle. He doesn't care about our kids. He doesn't care about our schools. And I'm going to keep saying this, and I know it's going to get back to Andrew Cuomo, and I really don't care. I don't want anything from him. But, I'm going to hold him responsible for these inequities and for the disparities that we're seeing. Now, I have seen the briefing on the one House bill that's coming out today from the Assembly Democrats, the majority. And what they've done, it's a 7% restoration. In other words, they put 7% back in. But it's, again, across the board. All it does is move the curve down. Wyoming County is still getting cut more than any other more than any other county, along with Genesee County Schools, Livingston County Schools, and all those areas out there. And all that does, again, is suggest to me or tells me that the liberal Democrats from New York City don't care about Western New York.
You talk about that next part of the process. The Assembly and the Senate, as we tape this program this week, are poised to pass their own budget bills. Now, the governor proposed one, the Assembly will pass one, the Senate will pass one, and then there's the negotiations to figure out the differences between the three so that there can be one final budget bill. Right. What you say you've learned a little bit about the bill that's going to be coming up before you to vote on in the State Assembly. If they're making up 7% of the education cuts, where's that money coming from? I thought the state was out of money.
Well, you know, again, I don't know exactly where it is going to come from. They're going to have to take it from someplace else, obviously. Health care, nursing homes, hospitals, pharmacy benefits.
I've heard something about the millionaire's tax that they're
millionaire's
looking to
tax.
do.
Now, I've heard that too, and I hear it's truly a millionaire's tax. The other tax that was presented that's actually in place now, that was passed in last year's budget that I didn't vote for, increased the tax rate on anybody making over $200,000 per year. Now, the thing about that is that may sound like a lot of money, but if you've got a business, a small business, and you're making over $200,000 a year, then you're taking that and paying that out in payroll. Your state corporate taxes are going to be at that higher rate. You're not necessarily a millionaire. I have, in my pharmacy alone, I pay out over $200,000 in salaries. I'm not considered a millionaire. So it's a really misnomer when they're talking about a mayor's tax. But apparently in this budget, it's going to be truly those people whose personal incomes are over $1 million. I still don't believe in raising taxes, but that's probably a little fairer than, you know, the person out there with the small business at $200,000.
Just a couple minutes left here. As this process now will move forward yet again, you've got a governor's budget, an assembly budget, a Senate budget. Now there's going to be what are known as conference committees meeting. Right. You've been appointed to one of those by the Assembly's minority leader, Brian Kolb. Right. He says, Dan Burling, you're going to be the guy overseeing the Health and Human Services portion of this discussion.
Yeah, and it's a big part of the budget. It's a huge part. It's probably the largest pot of money in the budget. So you're right. I'm going to be at the table. And I thank Leader Cole for entrusting me that responsibility. But it's actually going to be billions of dollars that we're going to be looking at. And obviously, I'm going to be advocating for, you know, my districts and my schools and my kids and my nursing homes and my hospitals, with keeping in mind that we do need to cut back. We need to be able to run government more like a business, less spending. We need to make it leaner, and we need to make New York State a place that prospers so that our children can have a place to work when they graduate from college.
Sounds like you're telling me you're going to sit at the table and try to be the voice of reason?
I'm going to try to do that.
Can you have reason at a legislative discussion here at the state capitol?
Well, you know, I've been known to bang the table a few times, so we'll see. I've got my Marine Corps tie on. You see that, Michael?
Semper Fi.
Semper Fi. Hoorah.
Semper Fi,
Hoorah.
and take no prisoners.
That's right.
All right. Dan Burling is... It's always a pleasure to have you here and to get caught up with what's going on at the state capitol. If you folks watching want to know how you can reach out and be in touch with your representative, it's an easy thing for you to do. There's the address on the screen where you can reach Dan Burling, the office in Warsaw. In the 585 area code, you can dial 786-0180, or you can drop an email at the address you see right there at the bottom of the screen, burlind@assembly.state.ny.us. And as always, we want to thank Dan Burling for joining us. Always a pleasure, and we'll be catching up with you over the next couple weeks to find out